Last week we started the book of Ruth. There was a little bit of discussion on the time that this was. I know Roger was asking, well, what time this was, and it tells us there when the judges ruled. I wanted to maybe talk a little bit about that. What was the attitude at that time when the judges ruled? What was the attitude of the people? Well, I mean, what was their current attitude when they were under the judges? What was their thought process?
Everyone did just what they wanted to do.
Exactly. They wanted to do whatever they wanted to do. And they were going to do it. When we looked at Elimelech here, when he left Bethlehem, do we see anything in the text that tells us that he prayed to God, that he meditated on his word? Lord, what should I do at this time because Bethlehem is suffering a famine? Do we see any of that in here? That he looked to the Lord? I didn't see any. Maybe somebody else did. I didn't see any ideal of him saying, you know what? I don't know what to do here, Lord. It's a famine here. Now remember, he's a very well-respected man, and I think he probably had a little bit of wealth. But there's a famine, and he just up and decides to leave. In his mind, he was doing what he thought was good, wasn't he? In the situation at hand, I'm going to pick up my family and leave. Is that the way we should live our lives today? That whatever I decide to do, if I've decided I'm going to change jobs or I'm going to move to Arizona, do we just up and leave? Or do we ask our neighbors? Well, you know, you've been down there a lot. I mean, how is it down there? Is it good? How's the housing? Do we research everything out totally to our own understanding, or do we first go to God and say, Lord, I don't know what you have in mind here. It's not looking real good. It's kind of bleak right here. But your will has to be done. Do we do that? We should. Because in this situation where Elimelech left with his two sons, and remember, his two sons weren't kids, they were young men. They were marriageable age. And remember where he's going. He's going to Moab. Elimelech worships God, doesn't he? And he's going to another area that does not worship God. I think there was mentioned what the relationship with the Moabites and the children of Israel was, as far as, was it forbidden? It wasn't forbidden for them to marry Moabites, but it was Canaanites. They could not marry them. That was forbidden. It was not looked upon kindly. But Elimelech is taking his two eligible, marriageable sons to a land that does not worship Jehovah God. Was that thinking properly? Was that thinking about his family and his future?
Doesn't seem wise.
Not wise in God's eyes, is it? It's wise in man's eyes. Because he's going to a place that's got land of plenty, basically, in his eyes. They're doing good over there. The house of bread, Bethlehem, they're lacking. So we're going to go where it's better. Once again, not really thinking of what his sons' lives would be like. Marrying into families that did not worship God. Putting his wife in a situation where she is in an area that there's probably not going to be a lot of people worshiping God. Paul.
Even Elimelech has already demonstrated that attitude. I'm just gonna do whatever's right in my own eyes.
Exactly.
He wasn't concerned
No.
about his sons and their fate,
Mhm.
or really anything else than having a full belly.
Right.
I'm gonna do what I think.
Exactly. And that was the attitude of the majority of the people at this time, in the time of the judges.
Well, I was thinking this week about this, it kept rolling around in my mind, you know, how devastating it had to have been for Naomi and then for Ruth and her sister-in-law, and how all of this happened, but it was a consequence of Abimelech's choice
Mhm.
and not trusting God.
Right. At this time of the judges, God dealt with the people in ways that they were always coming to God and going away from God, coming to God and going away from God. How would he keep that in check? He would put things in their life that would make them look to God. Okay, this situation right here. Elimelech goes off. What happens? He dies. The two sons, they marry foreign women that worship something else. They die. Remember when Naomi came back? How she said, you know, I left full and I come back empty. Don't call me Naomi, call me Mara, bitter. Probably what was going on in her mind is, you know what? This is God getting me back for what we did wrong. That's why she was bitter. Do things like that happen to us today? Does God keep us in check sometimes with things that happen in our life? He does, doesn't he? Do we listen?
Hopefully.
Exactly. Hopefully we do.
But if we haven't started a relationship with God, you can't hear him as good as you do when you get to bed.
Exactly. That's why you have to always be in connection with God as a Christian. Be in meditation, be in prayer, be in His Word, knowing what He has in store for us. Because it'll tell us what He has in store for us. It's not going to specifically say, okay, now you're going to be the manager of Walmart. Okay? But it's going to say, you are going to prosper if you are with me. Now, it's also going to say, if you truly follow me, you're going to suffer persecution. Why don't we ever take that as something that He has promised? Because when we suffer persecution, sometimes they go, God, why? Why? It's because we are doing God's will. If we're not suffering, are we doing God's will? When life goes along with butterflies and rainbows and everything's great and everything goes my way, am I truly following God? Or is Satan putting that lie in front of me saying, hey, everything's okay? Because it is not easy. Did any of the disciples have an easy time following Christ? I mean, they were there with Him. They were in person with Him. And they seen the great and marvelous things that He did. Did they have an easy time with it, just following this great man? Not at all. They would have been better off fishing. Even a bad day of fishing would have been better than going through some of the struggles that they went through with Christ, following Him. But yet, they chose Him. And He told them, you fishermen will be fishers of men. They didn't understand that. And it's probably good that they didn't, because they might have said, it's too much. If He'd have told them everything that they were going to go through, right at the first, they'd have said, no way. I'm going to go back to fishing.
Didn't they all eventually die for their cause except one? There was one that didn't die.
John, yeah. But yeah, they all suffered. I mean, major. Was it Peter that they claimed was crucified upside down? And
That was by his choice, though.
Yeah.
Upside down.
and Paul, the times that he was in prison, the times that he was stoned. all of that. Yeah. If we knew that that was guaranteed, we would suffer that, would we make that decision rashly and say, I'll follow you, you bet? Or would we say, you know what, I got to think about that. I got to think about that yet. And that's what, as we read in His Word, all of these things are answered for us, aren't they? In His Word. Go ahead, Dan.
But you also got to look at the human factor of it. When they were called, they followed Him because they believed in Him. And just like us, if He had told them, well, you know, you're going to suffer all these things in the beginning, they probably still would have done it, because just like us, oh, it won't happen to me.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have that. And if you love somebody like your spouse or your family, you'll die for them
Mm-hmm.
without problem. And that's where the apostles were. They were so in love with Him, and as they seen what He did, they were willing to suffer for Him.
Right.
So, you know, we got to remember, you know, you and I, we grow up, and as you're a young person, it's not till you get old where you think stuff really affects you.
Oh yeah,
So,
exactly.
and, you know, I think that's the same thing with them. They would have said, no, they ain't gonna. Peter would definitely say, don't worry, it won't
Right.
bother me.
I got it under control, yeah.
Yeah.
I've got it all
So
there.
they probably still would have followed.
Mhm.
I mean, obviously that was God's plan, so
Right.
of course it would have happened.
Right,
But yeah, I mean, if you look at it from a realistic standpoint, a human standpoint.
right. Janet?
We have to look at the fate of women in those days. They didn't have it very easy, and they're dependent on the men to feed them, to help them.
Yep.
And it was nothing more fearful, and that went on for many, many years after that, where when a woman was left alone or to decide, the consequences were often terrible.
Right.
And I'm sure there was a fear of that to go
Mhm.
against that judgment of their husband.
Yep. Because what did Christ say? To take care of what? The orphans and widows. Because there was nothing no one would take care of them. As we read further on, we'll find out this relationship of kinsmen and how they would be taken care of through their family, no matter how far down the line it went, if there was someone available. But yes, that's right. Women were not cared for. They were not taken in if they lost their husbands. Now, Dan brought up a good point here on the fact that our human thinking process, our belief, would carry us through some of these things. When we look at Naomi leaving and she left with her two daughter-in-laws, is it Orpah? Orpah and Ruth. She's trying to convince them that you need to go back to Moab. Okay, now Naomi grew up worshiping God, and I think she had a huge impact on her daughter-in-laws. Because they want to follow her. They want to care for her. That's our mother-in-law. They leave, and then she tries to convince them, go back. There's no way that I am going to have a son that will carry on, that you guys can marry, that you guys can be a part of this family. It's just not going to work. She tries to explain this to him. It's not going to work. Go back and get a husband from your own country, from Moab. Neither one of them wanted to do that, did they? They said, no, we're going to stay with you. She pleads with them again, and what happens? Orpah decides to go back. Why? She was influenced probably just as much as Ruth. Why did she decide to go back and Ruth not? What was she more familiar with? The land of Moab. How they worshipped. She was more familiar with the men there. She had family there. It was more comfortable there. Now, wouldn't Ruth have these same thoughts? She's from the same area. She has these same thoughts. It's comfortable there. But what is Ruth's attitude? Naomi tells them first to go back, each one of you, to your mother's home. They wept. She kissed them. Once again in verse 11 she said, but Naomi said, return home, my daughters. Why would you come with me? There's nothing that I can offer you. Nothing. At this they wept again in verse 14. Then Orpah kissed her mother-in-law goodbye, but Ruth clung to her. Look, said Naomi, your sister-in-law is going back to her people and her gods. Go back with her. But Ruth replied, don't urge me to leave you or to turn back from you. And then she goes on through the common saying, where you go, I'll go. And what was the difference? What was the difference in them two?
I think Ruth had been influenced by God already.
Already. Influenced by God, maybe by Naomi.
Surely Naomi still showed her dependence on God, worshiping Him.
Because it's still good times in Moab. But then she hears that Bethlehem is getting back on its feet. If you're still doing good in Moab, why would you want to go back to Bethlehem? Because that's where you are comfortable and that's where you worshiped God. In Moab, you're not worshiping God there. The main focus there is on the other gods that Moab worshipped. You would be a minority. So she's still thinking that God is the true Jehovah. So she's going to go back to where it's more comfortable for her. She realizes that the daughter-in-laws are not going to be comfortable there. But also, as Dan said, it was commitment. She was committed to Naomi. And I believe in reading this, she was committed to God. Because as you read through there, she's going to go where Naomi's going to go. She's going to stay where she goes. Your people will be my people, which is saying that Ruth is a Gentile. Right? Isn't it ironic how if you look in the Old Testament, how it points to the same thing that happens in the New Testament? Salvation through Christ came to who? The Jews first and then the Gentiles. In the Old Testament, was it just for the Israelites? Came to the Gentiles here too. Ruth, if you go back, Rahab was a Gentile. Tamar was a Gentile. You look through the lineages. She was committed to Naomi, and then your people will be my people, and your God, my God. She has already said right there, your God is my God. The commitment was not only to Naomi, but it was to God also. She was going to do the very best that she could to honor the God that put her in Naomi's life and continue on with her. And neither one of them, Naomi nor Ruth, had any idea what is going to happen here in the next little bit, the next few months. Right.
But the Heavenly Father did, right?
Exactly.
So
God
even
knew.
if Naomi's husband had contacted God and talked with him, God would have still sent him down there for you to bring Ruth out.
Yeah. I mean, when you look back on it, it's hard to figure, okay, now why did he put Elimelech in this situation? Couldn't he have done it some other way that would have brought more honor to God in that? But as God does things, he does things to help us learn lessons.
The story's not about Elimelech, so we don't know what he actually did or didn't do.
Right.
So he may have asked God that, if he should go down there or not.
He might have. It doesn't give any evidence, but he might have.
So when we're talking about the fleshly part of the story, we also got to look at the spiritual part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Naomi and Ruth were challenged with tribulations that were great and strong.
Right.
And their faith brought them through it. We all, even in today's life, we get challenged with tribulations. and we get through them, and our rewards are great. If you look toward your tribulations and you start to give me more, for your faith will be stronger, then you get more peace of mind about Him, and you get more content with God.
Right.
So tribulations should be welcome to us.
It should be. What if we make a decision, though, that is not, we're not putting God in there first. And we make a decision, and we come up with tribulation. How do we handle that? How do we handle that tribulation? Do we understand, okay, I made a mistake? Or do we just write it off, oh, it must have been God's will? Do we learn from that in order to draw closer to God? Or do we just say, you know, I'm going to make this decision and God's going to work it out no matter what. His will be done. His will be done. But when we make decisions not including Him, are we eventually going to be pushing the envelope with God? And by excluding Him on decisions, we think, now we're just going to let it ride because God's will be done. Do we really fully know what God has planned for us tomorrow? I mean, we may not have it tomorrow, correct?
But you were asking those questions, and if you go to John 15, 1 through 8, about the vine, and God, the vine dresser, and Jesus' vine and the branch.
Right.
The tribulation is the trimming of the vine to give it more fruits in your faith. So if you don't follow that and believe in those tribulations, you're going to be a dead branch on the vine, not producing fruits anymore, and then you get cut off.
Right. And Elimelech is dead. His 2 sons, they're dead.
So he trimmed the vine.
Were they trimmed?
Yeah.
Naomi's still alive. The 2 daughter-in-laws are still alive. Now the one daughter-in-law, Orpah, what's going to happen with her? We don't see anything else happening there with her, do we? We don't know what she did. She went back. She may have married a Moabite. She may have continued to worship their foreign gods. But she had the opportunity to be with Naomi. And the influence that Naomi had on Ruth was probably the same type of influence that she had on Orpah. And there could be, who knows? It doesn't tell us. But who knows? She may have decided, you know what? I'm not. I'm gonna go back. I want to find someone that worships God. Jen.
Well, if you've ever raised a toddler, their favorite word is no, when they're little. And I just think that we don't get rid of that toddler in ourselves, for the rest of our lives. We fight that all the time. It's our ego, our selfishness.
We don't like to be told what to do.
No.
We like to do things our way, just as they did at this time, during the time of the judges. Dan.
You know, you look at this, and we were drawing a parallel between the disciples earlier. Naomi, you could see her love for the 2 daughter-in-laws, great love. And so Ruth seen that, and so she had that great love for Naomi also in return. So that's why she wanted to stick with her and help her and be there for her, knowing that she was trusting in God. And just like the apostles did with Jesus,
Right.
They seen his great love for them, so it's really easy to return that. And I think that's where Ruth was at. She seen that, she felt that, and she felt committed to her.
Yep.
Also, you can compare this story with the parable of the sower. Naomi and Ruth was like seeds planted in good soil. But the other daughter was like seeds planted with thorns and thistles. She wanted to go, but the weight of the world brought her back.
Right. And like I say, we don't know what happened with her. She may have went back and married Moabite and whatever. But we do know that they both loved Naomi, because there was a couple of times they wept. They did not want to be separated. But, as was the thought of the times, in Orpah's mind, she decided, I guess this way will be better. I'll go back to Moab. Because she made the decision. Orpah made the decision. She could have made the decision to go ahead and follow, but she made the decision, no, I think I will go back.
I think people do that today.
We do.
Because for her, it was easier to go back what she knew.
Exactly.
For
It's
us as
comfortable.
Christians, we gotta be careful. We're not just doing stuff because it's easier, but we're doing stuff because we're instructed to do it as for God. So,
Exactly.
that's not always the easy way to go.
It's a perfect example of what happens today when you become a Christian. A new Christian. How easy is it to fall back into what you're comfortable with? We've seen it here personally. Both of them were thrilled to death to be going to Bethlehem with Naomi. Thrilled to death. Salvation. And then as the trip gets along, I think it's like 50 miles, it said. There, as the trip goes on, they're getting close to the border. Naomi says, you want to go back? Here, this is thinking reasonably. You want to go back? How often is a person that becomes a new Christian bombarded with Satan saying, hey, you know, it was a whole lot easier before you done this Jesus thing. It was a whole lot easier. You were comfortable. You could do what you wanted. No one told you what to do. You didn't have a book of regulations to follow. You just done what pleased you.
Live only for today.
Exactly. But is that the proper way to think? Do we look at this as a book of regulations or a book of life? That's what it is, isn't it? It's a book of life. But so many people will immediately say, well, I've got to do this, this, and this, and I'm not used to that. I don't want someone telling me what to do. It's not natural for us, is it? Submitting, being committed. That's what Ruth is showing here. Showing this to us so that we can learn from that how to be. And of course they go into Bethlehem and Naomi says, she left full, she came back empty. She said, don't call me Naomi, call me bitter, Mara. I don't think I would want to have been called that and reminded that all the time. Now she has a daughter-in-law that came with her. That's good, isn't it? But yet she still comes into town and says, God's dealing with me, for all the stuff that's happened. Yeah. So they get to Bethlehem, and this is right at the beginning of the barley harvest. Barley was harvested, then wheat. I think this was around April, May, along in there. And then it went on for a couple, 3 months. I think it was over by June, July, along in there. But they arrive in Bethlehem at this time. Starting in chapter 2. Now Naomi had a relative on her husband's side with the clan of Elimelech, a man of standing whose name was Boaz. And Ruth the Moabitess said to Naomi, let me go to the fields and pick up the leftover grain behind anyone in whose eyes I find favor. Naomi said to her, go ahead, my daughter. So she went out and began to glean in the fields behind the harvesters. Okay, now, Naomi knew that she had a kinsman, some relation through Elimelech, whose name was Boaz. Did she tell Ruth to go to Boaz's field? She didn't, did she? Ruth is the one that says, I'm going to go out and glean, right? It wasn't Naomi's idea. Naomi's not a matchmaker here. She's not trying to set this up, and get it all. Basically, Ruth says, I'm going to go and glean in the fields. Why? Does anybody know what gleaning is?
Yep. You go in after the harvest has been picked, and you find whatever's left.
Whatever's left.
And that's gleaning.
Right.
Pick whatever's left.
At this time, they were under the old law, and under the old law, the owner of the land that his harvesters went through, he couldn't take it all. He couldn't glean his own fields. He took his harvest, and then it was left for those in need. They would go out and they would glean. He didn't have any right to the gleanings of that. So this is what the lower class people did, the ones that didn't have fields, that didn't have a harvest. They would go out and they would glean. Just like it used to be that way here with the potato fields, the onion fields. At the end of the row, you know, there was always some that dropped off, there was some that weren't picked and that. They left them out there and people came to gather. That's the same thing, it's gleaning.
You still do that now over in southeast Oregon, around Vail.
Exactly.
They do that. After the harvest, it's perfectly fine, go out and pick up what's in the...
Right. What's left in the fields. The owner doesn't want to mess with it. And if someone can get some good from it, have at it. So that's what Ruth is going to do. She's going to go out and she's going to find a field. She's going to pick a field and she's going to glean. Now remember, she's a foreigner. Naomi said, "Go ahead, my daughter." So she went out and began to glean in the fields behind the harvesters. As it turned out, she found herself working in a field belonging to Boaz, who was from the clan of Elimelech. As it happened. By chance. How much luck? Nope. It was God's providence here. It was God's will that she go to his field to glean. Now some people would look at that, oh, that was just coincidence. It was just close. It was God's will that happened. Just then, Boaz arrived from Bethlehem and greeted the harvesters. "The Lord be with you. The Lord bless you," they called back. Just so happens, by luck, by coincidence, no. It was meant to be. Boaz comes at this time to check on his harvesters. He's the landowner. He's not out there actually harvesting. He's got his crew. They're harvesting. Men and women alike. They're out there harvesting the field. He's come to check on them. Is there anything? He's probably talking to his head guy, supervisor over all of them. Anything need to be happening? Do I need to bring bigger wagons? Do we need to haul more in? What, how's things going? And notice how they greet each other. Boaz says, the Lord be with you. And they answer, "The Lord bless you." They called back. How often do we greet people like that today? Our brothers and sisters in Christ, that would be the ones that we would really like to greet that way, but how often do we do that? "The Lord be with you." "The Lord bless you." We don't mention that enough, do we? Are we blessed? Is the Lord with us? Do we want the Lord with us? I think sometimes we back off of that because we don't want to be a spectacle. We don't want to be obvious Christians.
We don't want to be too charismatic about it.
Exactly. We don't want to be classified in that Jesus freak category.
We don't want to be noticed.
But why not? Why don't we want to be categorized with Jesus? That Jesus is our Lord. That Jesus is the one that blesses us. That Jesus is the one that is with us. Why don't we want to let that be known?
Because we're not fully with Jesus.
I think that's one of the things. I think we lack that full, absolute, hands down commitment.
We don't want to be persecuted.
Well, that's a good reason why not to do that, because you know what? Someone can throw a slur at us. And that would kind of deflate us, wouldn't it? Who are they throwing the slur at? When you say Jesus is my Lord, and someone says, what are you, some Jesus freak? Who are they talking to? They're talking to him, not me.
But they'll be judged.
They will be. But will we be judged if we don't proclaim his name?
Yes.
When it tells us what we are to do in Matthew, go into all the world, will we be judged if we slack on that when we have an opportunity and we don't take it?
We'll be judged.
Is he going to say, you know what, I gave you like this many chances here, and you could have proclaimed my word. You could have proclaimed my name, and yet you didn't. You hid. Brother.
He says if we're ashamed of him, he'll tell us, depart, you workers of iniquity, I never knew you.
I don't want to hear that. I do not want to hear, I never knew you. I want to hear, well done, good and faithful servant. Because that means that I have done my best. I'm not going to be perfect. No one is going to be in here perfect. No one. But as long as we continue to strive to do our best for him, to proclaim his name, to spread his word, then he is going to say, well done, good and faithful servant. Well, I didn't get too far into chapter 2 there, but I've got to spread this out over several weeks because, if I just go right through it, we'll be done, in 2 more weeks. So I want to spread this out, but thanks for all your comments. There's a lot in here. The more I'm studying, the more I'm having to go back and redo some of this that we did before because there's so much here that we, I think, a lot of times just overlook because we read past it. So thanks for all your comments. We'll have a little break here before our worship.